King George I, 1714–1727, was the first British monarch from the House of Hanover. His original name was George Louis, and he was the ruler of Hanover in Germany. After the death of Queen Anne, he ascended the British throne under the Act of Wurry Settlement 1701 because he was Protestant, while Catholic claimants were excluded from succession. George I did not speak English well and preferred living in Germany rather than Britain, so he left day-to-day governance largely to his ministers. During his reign, Parliament and the Whig Party became very powerful, and Robert Walpole is regarded as Britain's first prime minister. George I also firmly suppressed the Jacobite Rebellion of 1715, which helped secure his rule. His personal life was unhappy, with poor relationships with his wife and his son. He died in 1727 while traveling in Germany, but his reign strengthened constitutional monarchy and laid a solid foundation for Britain's modern parliamentary system. King George II, 1727–1760, was the second British monarch from the House of Hanover and the son of King George I. Born in Hanover, Germany, he became king after his father's death and was the last British monarch to be born outside Great Britain. Although he could speak English better than his father, George II still relied heavily on his ministers for governance. His reign is especially associated with the continued dominance of Parliament and the long influence of Robert Walpole, Britain's first prime minister. During his rule, Britain was involved in major European conflicts, including the War of the Austrian Succession, and George II personally led troops at the Battle of Dettingen in 1743, making him the last British king to lead an army in battle. His reign also saw the Jacobite Rebellion of 1745, led by Charles Edward Stuart, which was decisively defeated at the Battle of Culloden in 1746, securing the Hanoverian dynasty. King George II died in 1760, and although he was not a powerful ruler personally, his reign further strengthened Britain's constitutional monarchy and parliamentary system. King George III ruled Great Britain and later the United Kingdom from 1760 to 1820, making his reign one of the longest in British history and one filled with dramatic change. He ascended the throne at a young age and was determined to strengthen royal authority while governing in partnership with Parliament. Early in his reign, Britain emerged victorious from the 7 Years' War, gaining vast territories and establishing itself as a leading global power, though the heavy costs of the war placed great financial strain on the empire. His attempts to raise revenue from the American colonies contributed to growing tensions that eventually exploded into the American War of Independence, resulting in the loss of the 13 colonies in 1776, a major blow to British prestige. Despite this setback, Britain recovered under his rule and played a central role in resisting revolutionary France and later Napoleon Bonaparte during the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, ultimately helping to defeat Napoleon and secure Britain's dominance at sea and in global trade. King George III was a devoted family man and a patron of science, agriculture, and the arts, supporting institutions that advanced learning and innovation. However, his later years were overshadowed by recurring episodes of severe mental illness, which left him unable to govern effectively, leading to the establishment of the Regency under his son, the future King George IV. King George III died in 1820, and although his reign included serious losses and controversies, it also laid important foundations for Britain's emergence as the world's foremost imperial power in the 19th century. King George IV ruled Great Britain from 1820 to 1830 after having acted as Prince Regent during the prolonged illness of his father, King George III. His regency and later reign are remembered for their flamboyant display of wealth, fashion, and culture, marking what became known as the Regency era. George IV was a highly cultured monarch with a deep love for art, architecture, literature, and music, and he used his position to commission grand projects, such as the remodeling of Buckingham Palace, the construction of the Royal Pavilion in Brighton, and the development of Regent Street in London. Politically, he was less active than his father, often leaving government affairs to his ministers, though he did engage in occasional disputes with Parliament over royal prerogatives and the role of the monarchy. His reign coincided with a period of social and economic change in Britain, including the ongoing Industrial Revolution and the beginnings of political reform movements that sought to expand suffrage and improve living conditions. George III's personal life was turbulent. His marriage to Caroline of Brunswick was unhappy, marked by estrangement and public scandal, and his health deteriorated due to obesity and illness. Despite these personal and political challenges, George IV's reign contributed to the cultural enrichment of Britain, leaving a legacy of magnificent buildings, patronage of the arts, and the image of a sophisticated, though sometimes controversial, monarchy. By the time of his death in 1830, he had helped shape a Britain that was increasingly modern, wealthy, and culturally prominent, even as calls for political reform continued to grow. King George V ruled the United Kingdom from 1910 to 1936, presiding over one of the most turbulent and transformative periods in modern British history. He ascended the throne after the death of his father, Edward VII, inheriting a monarchy that faced increasing political pressures, social change, and the growing tensions of an unstable Europe. Early in his reign, George V navigated conflicts between the monarchy and Parliament over the powers of the House of Lords, while domestic reforms and labor movements were reshaping British society. His leadership was tested profoundly during World War I, where he became a unifying symbol for the nation, visiting troops, supporting war charities, and maintaining morale on the home front. Amid widespread anti-German sentiment, he made the historic decision to change the royal family's name from the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to the House of Windsor in 1917, strengthening public support for the monarchy. After the war, George V guided Britain through the challenges of post-war reconstruction, economic hardship, and social unrest, including strikes and political upheavals. He also faced the struggle for Irish independence, overseeing the creation of the Irish Free State in 1922 while maintaining Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom. Internationally, his reign witnessed the rise of new political ideologies and the early stages of global tension that would later lead to World War II. Known for his steadfast sense of duty, personal discipline, and devotion to family, George V maintained the monarchy as a stable institution in an era of rapid change. His ability to remain politically neutral while engaging with the public helped preserve the credibility and continuity of the British crown. By the time of his death in 1936, George V had not only guided Britain through war and social transformation, but also firmly established the House of Windsor as a symbol of national unity and resilience, leaving a lasting legacy on both the monarchy and the country he served. King George VI ascended to the throne of the United Kingdom in 1936 under extraordinary and unforeseen circumstances, following the abdication of his elder brother, Edward VIII, who chose to leave the throne in order to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Originally known as Prince Albert, Duke of York, he had never expected to become king and had lived a relatively private life, focusing on his family and ceremonial duties. Struggling with a severe stammer and a natural shyness, George VI initially doubted his ability to meet the demands of monarchy. However, he accepted the crown out of a deep sense of duty and loyalty to his country, choosing the regnal name George VI to honor his father, George V, and to project stability and continuity during a time of national uncertainty. His accession coincided with rising tensions in Europe and the looming threat of World War II, placing him at the center of one of the most critical periods in British history. During the war, King George VI became a symbol of courage, resilience, and steadfast leadership. He regularly visited bombed cities, shipyards, and military installations, showing solidarity with civilians and armed forces alike. His partnership with Prime Minister Winston Churchill was vital in coordinating national morale, and his speeches over the radio helped reassure a terrified nation, projecting calm determination and patriotic unity. Despite his personal challenges, with public speaking, he worked closely with speech therapists to improve his delivery, famously delivering wartime addresses that inspired confidence across Britain and the Empire. After the war, George VI oversaw the nation's difficult transition from wartime devastation to peacetime recovery. Britain faced severe economic challenges, rationing, and social upheaval, but his leadership helped stabilize the country. His reign also witnessed the decline of the British Empire and the rise of decolonization, most notably marked by the independence of India and Pakistan in 1947, which required careful diplomacy and a sensitive public approach to maintain ties within the Commonwealth. Domestically, he witnessed the establishment of the modern welfare state, including the creation of the National Health Service, which transformed British society and improved living standards. George VI was admired for his humility, steadfast dedication, and personal integrity. He prioritized duty over personal comfort, maintained a strong moral example for his family, and cultivated close ties with the public during an era of profound uncertainty. His devotion to service strengthened the monarchy's legitimacy at a time when many European royal families were losing influence. By the time of his death in 1952, George VI had guided Britain through war, economic hardship, and the beginnings of a new global order, leaving behind a legacy of resilience, duty, and stability that prepared the way for the long and influential reign of his daughter, Queen Elizabeth II. His story is remembered not only for the challenges he faced, but for the courage, determination, and moral authority he brought to the throne, embodying the spirit of a nation in crisis and transition.